Well, welcome to the podcast. Nathan Newberry here, your host. I have Dr. William Attaway here joining us on the podcast. Super pumped for you guys to hear his story. If you guys are watching this video, the wall of books is not a background. It is actually legit. He is a well-to-do reader, but he's also a pastor, but he's also helping a lot of seven-figure coaches with leadership, as well as a lot of agencies. And so he does a lot of leadership growth. He has a book on leadership. He has his own podcast on leadership and interviewing some great people there, including me the other day, which is really cool. You got to go
That's
check
right.
that episode when that releases. But Will, I'm so blessed to have you on. Before I dive into asking some questions, everybody that's listening in here down below in the show notes, I want to give everybody a free gift. There's a workshop I worked on to help people really know how to build an online business. And so everybody that really wants to know how to leverage ads, how to really kind of look at that strategy from start to scale, building a media team, that's a workshop that you want to go check out. It's down below. Will, as we're diving into it, one of the questions I asked everybody is, what is high performance? What does that look like? Being in the world of faith, being in the world of business, being in the world of leadership, like you've seen a lot. How do you operate and characterize that definition of high performance?
I think, Nathan, it's about taking the resources and the information that you have at any given moment in time and using that in an optimal way. It's leveraging what you know and what you have, whether it's gifts, passions, talents, resources, whatever it is, in such a way that you look at this and you're like, that's optimized. That to me is high performance.
Yeah, man. Tell a little bit of, I'm going to go into your origin story. I want to hear more of this, but tell the clients a little bit more instead of my introduction of like what you do and how you serve people now.
So for just over 30 years now, I have been serving leaders by serving as an executive coach. I come alongside of them to help them see what they can't see, help them identify their blind spots, and truly to get out of their own way. I find that business owners, agency owners, they start a business or an agency because they're really good at providing a product or a service. And as they find success, they have to hire other people to help them with fulfillment. The problem is at that point, you now have people who are looking to you as the leader. And leadership is a different skill.
It is.
And so what I do is I come alongside and I help them in areas of leadership, mindset, and productivity to get out of their own way and move into that high performance space so that they don't become the lid or the cap on their business's growth.
Love it, man. Talk to us at the beginning of this. I mean, you've been doing this for decades, but you're also a pastor. How in the world did you go from getting into being a pastor, getting into the business leadership world? Like talk about the origin story a little bit about all of this.
It really goes back to when I was 15 years old, Nathan. I was invited to attend my very first leadership conference. I had a high school teacher who saw something in me that I really didn't see in myself. And he said, I think you'd really like this. And so I got on a plane and I went. And I think I may have been the only 15-year-old there. But I was absolutely captivated by what I saw and what I heard.
Hmm.
The power of leadership to influence, to impact, to create something beyond yourself. And since then, pushing 40 years ago now, I have been a student of leadership, trying to learn what really makes some leaders catalytic and what makes some leaders move more toward mediocrity.
Wow, man. Like 15 years old. I remember when you were saying that, I've been to a conference that my dad and my dad's friend went to, and I listened to Zig Ziglar and some other great people. Like
Yeah.
it was really
Yeah.
cool to hear the motivational side of leadership stuff. And man, but what a take. And it really inspired me in a lot of ways as well. What got you in then to being a pastor? What was that transition like then?
When I went to college, I went as a pre-pharmacy major. I had worked in a pharmacy in high school and thought this would be a great way to serve people, make a difference. Got into my second year, hit organic chemistry, which is designed as the washout point. And it works really, really well because it washed me right out. I hit organic chemistry and decided this is not what I want to do for the rest of my life. But in my brief chemistry studies, that first year and a half, I learned about the power of what's called a catalyst. It's something that you introduce into a mixture in order to incite or to accelerate significant change or action. Well, I've been a student of leadership for a couple years at that point, and I thought, man, every great leader that I've ever learned from or learned about would resonate with that definition. This is inciting or accelerating significant change or action. That's what they're all about. And so that began a process of me studying and learning what it is that makes some leaders catalytic. Now, in the middle of that process, I moved into the corporate world and I started working and serving and learning about leadership and training other leaders. And I began to be put in positions where now I'm in charge. Now I'm responsible for teaching other people and training and equipping them, helping them to learn and to grow. And man, at that point, I was 19 years old. I barely knew what I was doing myself. And that began a journey of beginning to learn how to pour into and equip other people. Now, it wasn't very long after that, a couple of years, that I met Jesus and everything changed. And all of a sudden I began to think, what would it look like to begin to take these passions that I believed at that point God had given me for leadership, for equipping other people, for pouring into them and helping them move from where they are to where they want to be. What would it look like to do that in the local church? And so I left the corporate world, moved into local church ministry, and have been serving through the local church now for goodness, 28 years.
Wow. And then when did you make that transition? Because I know, because when I was a pastor, it didn't pay that well. And many pastors, they had,
I took a pretty big
bivocational.
pay cut. Yeah.
They had to find another way to make, extra money. I mean,
Yeah.
I feel like, I don't know the exact count, but it seemed like 80% plus of pastors I knew all had some side gig, some side hustle or something that they were doing, and they were bivocational with it. Did you have to do that yourself? Is that why you got into leadership elements with the corporate world and in agencies? And
No, really. I began, obviously at the very beginning, I was still trying to finish my education, finishing college, because once I had a clear direction at that point, then I was like, okay, now I'm going to go back and actually make good use of this. So I finished my bachelor's and master's and later a PhD. But my intent was to use all of that to give me the ability to pour into other people better.
Mhm.
The local church was something that I was committed to and still am. I still serve as a local church pastor. I've been at the church I'm at now for almost 21 years, serving as the lead pastor there outside DC. And one of the things that I have learned is that what I do in the church really and truly is one opportunity to live out my calling, but what I do in my coaching practice is another opportunity to do that. Instead of waiting for them to come to me in a church building, I'm going to them. I'm speaking at companies' offsites. I'm going and speaking at conferences. I'm writing books. I'm coaching leaders. About 60% of my clients today are in the digital marketing agency space. That's the niche that I specialize in. But about 40% are not. Everything from executives at Amazon to the COO of a $29 billion public company. A very, very wide range of people where they are. But my goal throughout is, how do I take the light of Jesus into the places where I get to go?
Yeah.
How can I be a person that is a resource to help other people? Because I believe that's truly what it means to be the hands and feet of Jesus.
Yeah. What is some principles of things? I want to kind of dive into this with some tactics, because leadership is a skill, like we've talked about. I mean, I think there's four core ways that I've seen businesses need to grow in skills. And this is why so many people have jobs, is because you have to learn a lot when you run a
Yeah,
business. You have to
that's
market
right.
yourself, you have to sell your service or product, you have to be able to know how to do the fulfillment, and then also lead people or systems or automations. Like, these are skills that everybody needs to continue to grow in. Otherwise, they struggle in their limit. And I want to give you this example here. I want to get your take. I remember leading one of my first careers when I was in my early 20s. I was doing recruiting. I ran a recruiting office, and I wasn't leading that well. And I remember my wife saying, "Hey, maybe that's just not your gift." And I was like, "Wait, like." it's a skill. Like I'm figuring it out. Like, but most of the time people make it just a dead determination. Like, oh, you're just not good at this, and so you give up. And I've seen a lot of, beginning entrepreneurs. They're like, oh man, I struggle with this, or I hired bad, and so I'm never going to hire again. I only want to work with myself. I've seen that a lot with when I was coaching agencies. Like there were people who are like, I don't want to hire anybody because of the complications of hiring people. And it was just because they didn't know how to lead because they never wanted to continue that leadership because they had some bad taste in their mouth. So I want to get your expertise on like why do people limit themselves from it and how they can grow into leadership in wherever they're at.
I find a lot of people have really strong limiting beliefs around that. And when you begin to talk to them about leadership, oh, I'm not a leader. I'm not, and they just immediately
Right.
cut it off and look down, like that's
Right.
not who I am. And I'm like, well, hang on just a second. This is a skill. I mean, the first time you hopped on a bike, were you fantastic at it? No, most of us fell right over. Like we didn't know how to do this yet. It's no different. We learn by doing. Now, I'm a strong believer in coaching. I've had coaches for decades. That's what I get to do now. I think coaches help you go farther than you can go on your own, and they can help you get there faster. They can help you find the shortcuts. If I can help you avoid a ditch that you're aimed for and you're going to drive into, I have helped you. If I help you find that shortcut, I have helped you. That's what coaches get to do. But the truth of the matter is that so much of leadership you have to learn by doing. The first time you hire somebody, you are going to learn a whole lot about hiring. Now, I can come alongside and I can help you process that. I can help you say, okay, what went great about that? What are some things that you would not repeat? What would you do different next time? And we'll walk you through some questions and help you really squeeze the learning out of the experience. But you've got to do it.
Mhm.
If we just talk about it and you never practice it, that's not leadership. That's academics.
I want to get your take on this too, because I think people realize when you want to grow, you have to become a leader, right? I think I think so many times people think of like the idea of like they want to build an amazing business where they want to be world denters, but you literally cannot do it by yourself. So it's a skill that people need to like lean into and saying, look, I just got to get better and better and better at it for that vision to grow. Otherwise, you have a short, like a short vision for someone's life if you're not leaning into that. Like, talk about the opportunity you lost by not taking advantage of learning this skill.
I think about a client that I was working with a few years ago, and he was running an agency, and he came to me with his biggest challenge was churn on his team.
Mhm.
His average team member was staying with him. You could measure the tenure in weeks,
Mm.
not in months or years. Okay, what's going on here? Like you have high churn on your team. That is going to translate into high churn with your clients. 100% of the time, how that works. So he was having high churn on both sides, obviously negatively impacting his agency. And in his words, he described things as a dumpster fire. Okay, well, let's get to work. So we start looking and evaluating, and he had great systems and processes and SOPs and all the things that we talk about when it comes to operations. So what's missing? And as I start diving in and digging in and asking some questions that are very targeted to uncover what's happening, the problem was a lack of trust. The team did not trust him, and he did not trust them. Now, trust is a foundational currency
Mhm.
when it comes to leadership. If you do not have trust, you have lost the ability to lead. And this is why people weren't sticking around. They didn't feel valued. They didn't feel trusted. And if you don't feel valued and trusted, you're going to go somewhere else, somewhere where you will be. We were able to address that. We were able to talk this through, talk about ways to build trust, talk about ways to create an environment of trust where trust will flourish instead of a place where trust is extinguished. Leaders, as one guest on my podcast said a few months ago, and I love it, he said, leaders create the weather. I love that. We create the environment. And learning how to create an environment that is conducive to trust is one of the best things that you can do as a leader for your business, for your team, for your clients.
So, give me some examples of trust because I think that's a hard one for many people for all sorts of obvious reasons because marriage is broken and relationships are hacked to pieces, with, trust for sure with that bond. So, and then there's bosses that micromanage, right? To an extent where people feel stifled in a lot of
Yeah.
ways. When you're talking about trust, what are some easy ways that leaders can really hand off and empower people to do their role?
One of the simplest is actually dates back to Peter Drucker, if you remember him, the father of modern management, right back in the 50s and 60s. Drucker was fond of saying that a leader's greatest task is to determine who is doing what. And I love that. Who's doing what? And I'll add on to that and say, I think it's who is doing what by when. In every team meeting, at the end of that meeting, there ought to be complete clarity on who is doing what by when, based on what you've discussed. If everybody understands that and everybody's on the same page, then accountability is no longer a heavy lift. Here's what happens. There's confusion. Not everybody understands exactly what's responsible. And so then when the leader goes to somebody and says, hey, did you get that thing done? That was due today. That was today? That was me? I thought that was, I didn't understand. Oh, I haven't done it. I haven't even started. I didn't know that was mine. Today? What does that do? Well, that creates in the leader's mind, well, you're untrustworthy.
Hmm.
You're not somebody I can depend on. That baggage you will then carry with you for the rest of that employee's tenure. That team member will always have that baggage because you have now seen it and you can't unsee it. Boy, that's so simple. Who's doing what by when? You have at the end of a meeting, you have that clarified. Hey, just make sure everybody knows who's doing what by when. If there's 5 tasks, there's 5 lines, and everybody gets a copy of that emailed out at the end of the meeting. There's no confusion. There's
That's good.
clarity, and it helps trust because now there's clarity.
How often do you suggest meetings take place?
Oh, it depends on the context. I think, for some you could do once a month. I think for some you could do once a week. I think for some you need to do a daily stand up.
Hmm.
Patrick Lencioni's book Death by Meeting, I think, is a classic on this. One of the best books on meetings I know. And he talks about 4 different types of meetings, and that each one has a purpose and a different rhythm, and that too many of us are trying to actually accomplish the purposes of all 4 in one meeting. He calls it meeting stew, and meeting stew does not taste good. It's
Yeah.
not a good plan. So I think you've got to be intentional in what you're intending each meeting to do, whether it's a daily stand up, whether it's a weekly tactical, whether it's a quarterly offsite or a brainstorming meeting.
Hmm.
You need to be clear about exactly what you want that meeting to accomplish and not expect everybody to do everything, in the next 60 minutes.
Yeah. I'm gonna get your take on hiring because sometimes people hire bad, right? It's just like an obvious one.
Yeah.
Their nephew or someone just got laid off or something like that, where they just hire and you're trying to figure out how to get an A player. Sometimes you get B and C players. You're trying to build stuff. So something I've been learning, I want to get your take on this, is you want to hire for culture and then you hire for character and then you hire for skill. And most of the time people hope and pray. They hire for skill. They hope that they're good character, and then they hope they kind of fit with the culture because they've been heard it's like a token word, but they're just hiring for that skill. Realistically, what's your take though, like on hiring good people? What's your interview process? What's the best way to kind of sort through building and leveraging people's time and energy and effort to be able to focus on the mission that it's accomplished?
I fleshed some of this out in a chapter in my last book. I talked about the 5 C's of hiring that I use.
Okay.
And this is a filter I've used for a long time. It actually started with 3 and then it became 4 and then it became 5 because as I have learned more and experienced more, uh, it really changes how I look at hiring. So these are the 5 C's just really quick. The first one is character. Like you said, character is absolutely non-negotiable. Okay. There are a lot of places where you can do character reclamation. My team is not one of them. Okay. If somebody's going to come in, I need them to be a person of character. And what I mean by that is that you do what you say you're going to do when you say you're going to do it. That's a person of character. That's somebody who is trustworthy that the team can depend on and rely on.
Hmm.
That's character. The second one is commitment, right? I want somebody who's going to be around for a minute. Now, I'm not expecting you to be with me till Jesus comes. Okay. What I'm expecting is that you're going to be with me for a season.
Yeah.
I do not want to train you. And then 2 months later, you're down the street because they offered you another dollar.
Yeah.
That's not going to be helpful. I'm not asking you forever, but I'm asking for a season. So we talk about that in the interview process. We talk about the commitment. So character, commitment. The third one is chemistry. I want to know that you have good chemistry with the rest of the team. And so my team is actually part of the hiring process. Like they're part of the interview. And we talk about that. We talk about chemistry. What does the chemistry feel like? This is somebody you're going to be spending some time with every week. I want to know that there's good chemistry on the team. You also get the advantage of other people's eyes and ears that may see or hear something that you missed. That's incredibly advantageous in my experience. So chemistry matters a whole lot. Competency is the fourth one. I need to know that you can do what it is we're asking you to do. Now, personally, I tend to hire people early in their journey. I would rather take somebody and train them into a position rather than have to untrain them from what they think they know from their last job. Mm-hmm. Personal preference, everybody has a different view on that one, but they need to have some level of competency or the potential of competency in an area. And the last one is culture. Every team, every company, every organization has a culture. You either have one you meant to have that you protect and guard, or you have one that you did not mean to have, but you have a culture. I need to know that you are going to be a good fit in our culture. We work hard and we have fun, and both of those things are important. And there's a tension there. And I need to know somebody's going to fit well in that. We talk about the last 10% of honesty on our team. I need to know somebody's going to be a fit in that culture. So those are the 5 C's. Those are part of the hiring process for us. I also run them through a couple of assessments. I really like the DISC and the Working Genius assessment. So I use both of those as part of hiring to help me understand somebody's wiring and how they are going to best contribute and fit into the team.
Yeah. What about like the specific hiring? How do you find these people? Is a question I
Mm,
hear quite a bit. How do you end
yeah.
up finding the pool of great talent?
My best hires have been referrals from somebody that I knew. You can put ads out and we do. You can say, "Hey, we're looking for," and you'll get a bunch of people who will throw their hat in the ring. But my best hires have been referrals.
Yeah. People that know, refer people. That's good. I want I want to get your tactics here now as we're kind of shifting, gears into some things. You have an online brand. You've written books. You're a speaker. Like, how did that come to play, and how important is that right now for you to get clients?
Incredibly important. To answer your last question first, it's incredibly important. The one of the hardest things for me, I was just talking to somebody about this earlier, is one of the hardest things for me is to put yourself out there and say, "Look what I'm doing." Gosh, that just feels not great to me. And that's a personal thing. But branding is how other people know you exist. You can't serve other people if they don't know who you are.
Yeah.
And so you have to put yourself out there. To be invited to speak is an incredible honor and privilege, and I get to do that. Uh, what I've done in the church and in corporate before that, has obviously contributed to the ability to do that. But all of it, truly, Nathan, is an opportunity for me to, instead of being in a church waiting for people to come to me, I get to go where they are. I get to go into their environments. And that's how I see it. I see it as an opportunity to go and to bring value, as much value as I possibly can wherever I go. I want to drop so much value that they walk out saying, "Man, that was a phenomenally great use of time." Uh, if I can share that through books with people that I'll never meet, that only expands that impact, which is why I write books. The speaking, the writing, all of these things are contributing factors to the fact that people want to engage me and want to say, "Hey, how can I work with you?" The biggest client lead flow sources that I have right now are the podcasts that I've been hosting, and the speaking that I do.
And then your book, I think so many times people feel like I want to write a book and it's a loss leader as a lead magnet, but not necessarily like a fame to claim where people are going to buy millions of book and make millions of dollars from it. Like, what was your take and experience with writing a book and how that's helped you be able to get on stages and build the program and core coaching you have now?
One of the best pieces of advice I got was from a coach that I was working with at the time. And he said, books are a way to expand your reach to people that you may never personally interact with. He said, but never, ever, ever think I'm going to make money off the books. He said, don't think that. Just
Right.
go into it knowing this is not going to be a revenue driver. And that really, truly, it sounds simple, but that mindset has served me very, very well. I don't go into it thinking that. Now, yeah, there's a little bit of revenue that comes in. It's not a ton. You're not going to live on it. But the goal here is not to say how much money can I make by writing. The goal here is to say how many people can I impact? How much value can I add? Often when I go speak somewhere, they'll buy copies of my last book and give it to the attenders, right? This is a way that I can add value to them, not just with the speaking, but also through the writing. That's fantastic. I love that. But it cannot be overstated how important it is to get out there. And if your listeners are thinking, oh, I should probably write a book, then yes, you probably should. Like it's an important thing. And I'm happy to share some things that I do that help me to do that
Yeah, I'd
consistently.
love to hear
Um,
those.
a friend of mine says consistency is the mother of momentum. Everybody wants momentum, and consistency is how you get there. Consistency is not fun. Consistency is boring as all get out. Okay. But that's how you get there. So this is when I'm in a writing season, I'm in one right now. When I'm in a writing season, then I'm writing 500 words a day, 6 days a week, 500 words a day. It's important that you don't try to edit while you're writing. It's two different parts of your brain. Okay. I'm just writing. I'm not editing at all. A lot of what I write may be absolute garbage that later will end up on the cutting room floor. That's okay. I'm writing 500 words a day. I use a writing software package called Atticus, and it actually tells me how many words I've written that day and total. So I can track it. I can see it. 500 words a day in, day out. Sometimes that takes me 30 minutes. I sit down and I bang out 500 words. Sometimes it takes me an hour and a half, but I'm going to commit to 500 words a day. If you do 500 words a day for 90 days, you got a really good run and start at a book,
Yeah. Yeah.
but it takes consistency. And I think this is the piece that a lot of people really, really don't focus on. Uh, don't focus on this being the best magnum opus ever in the history of ever. Focus on consistency. Focus on putting 500 words on screen, on paper, however you do it, every day. You do that every day in, day out during your writing season. You're going to have a book at the end of that. Later, you'll go back and edit. Of course you will. Later, you'll go back and then you'll get somebody else to edit it, which I always recommend. Get your editor to go through this. And different types of editors are very important. But really, consistency, just sitting down and doing the work, even when you don't feel like it, that's key.
What about like preparing for speeches? Like, what does that take, with the time and effort and focus?
It depends. If it's a talk I've done numerous times before, obviously not as much. If it's a brand new talk, then that's a whole lot more. And this is personal, and everybody's a little different on this. I don't use notes when I teach, whether it's on a Sunday or whether it's on a platform. That's just not how I work. But what I want to do is I want to make sure that I'm communicating at a heart level, and to do that, I've got to be able to see your eyes. And if I'm looking at my notes, I'm not looking at your eyes. And so I'm constantly reading the room, engaging people's connection while I'm talking. And in order to do that, I have got to internalize the talk to a level where I don't have to think about it, where it's just second nature. It's just like this conversation with you. I didn't script this out. I didn't prepare and write all this stuff out. It's just a conversation. That's how it feels when I'm giving a talk. That's how I want it to feel. One of the best compliments I get is that, man, talking to you is just like hearing you when you're on stage. There's no difference. Good. That's by design.
Yeah. What does your media team look like right now? Do you have someone that's helping you post and helping you kind of manage stuff, or even reach out to these different stages? Like, how are you doing things right now to get clients and to be able to manage things?
I do have a great team. I have a COO who does a phenomenal job of kind of keeping the ships running and everything running on time. She's absolutely fantastic. We've been working together for almost 8 years. I have a podcast producer who does a really great job of making sure that the episodes are produced at a high level. She's the one who's responsible for cutting up all the social media clips, reels and stories and all that stuff, the graphics that go out. And that's phenomenal. Once I do an interview like this and I hit stop, that's the last thing I do. She does everything else, including communication with the guests. And that has been tremendous. It's important to note that I did not start there. At the beginning, I was doing everything. Season 1 looked very, very different than season 3. And I think it's important to note, if you're thinking about, or your listeners are thinking about this, about starting a podcast, yes, you should first. Second, do not expect any momentum or traction for a long time. It was 19 months before we started to gain traction. That's 19 months of wondering if anybody is listening.
How many episodes was that? I'm curious.
Oh, well over 100. Well over 100. We're coming up on 250 now. So it was well over 100. You just wonder, is anybody paying attention to this? Is this just going out into the void? Is there a black hole somewhere sucking all this up? 19 months. Now, almost 3 years in, as we're getting ready to start our 4th season, we're in the top 2% of shows in the world. That was not true season 1 and even halfway through season 2. So it's just important to, again, note the importance of consistency. Everybody wants the momentum. Everybody wants that top 2% or top 1%, which is what we're gunning for this year. But you don't get there without consistency. We've never missed an episode. We do it every week. Season 1, we did 1 episode a week. Season 2, we did 2 episodes a week. Like season 3, we started with 3 and said, nope, that's too much. Drop back down to 2. Because you learn, you evaluate. Consistency is key.
Yeah. Yeah. Talk up to us about managing a team, managing your church, also being able to be married and be able to have a family. Like, the dynamics of this is not easy to manage. An entrepreneurship spirit and drive where you're just like, let's grow. And then also realizing, hey, I got these other priorities that are real important. How do you gauge that? Because, speaking and then also being present with your church and speaking on Sunday, being present with the family. I mean, that's a dynamic that's important to really kind of take into account. How do you balance all that?
Very, very carefully. It takes intentionality, Nathan. And I'll say that I would not say that I'm perfect by any stretch of the imagination at it. But in each one of those environments, I have a team. Let's start at home. My wife and I have been married coming up on 28 years this year. And we are a team. And we really see it that way. We compensate for each other in areas where we're weak, and we cheer each other on in areas where we're strong. That's how it's been. That's how it has always been. And I think that is the core of really everything else I'm going to talk about. That's only possible because of our faith. That's the number one thing. And as I'm teaching on this, whether it's on a Sunday or if I'm talking to entrepreneurs, I talk about this. If you're a person of faith, your relationship with your Heavenly Father is the very first priority in your life. If you're married, your spouse is next. If you have kids, your kids are next. And then comes everything else. And if you work at a church, that does not equate to your relationship with your Heavenly Father. That does not mean your church is above your spouse and your kids. Don't do that. It's a mistake. When you start playing Jenga with those things, you really screw things up. And I've watched it so many times. When people tell me, oh, well, my kids are the most important thing in my life. First off, are you married? Second off, are you a person of faith? Because if so, no, they're not. Don't do that. Right. You're playing Jenga. Stop it. And so, like, for me, it all grows out of that relationship with God. My spouse is my first team. That's the most important team that I'm on. My kids, our oldest daughter just graduated college. Our younger daughter just graduated high school. And so, they're at a different stage of life than they were when they were preschoolers. We are at a different stage of life. That gives me freedom and flexibility today that I did not have 15, 20 years ago. I would never have tried to do all I'm doing now 15, 20 years ago because we were in a different season.
Right.
Much more was required of me at home in that season. You have to make intentional choices. And sometimes those choices are, not for now, not forever, just not for now. And I think that's critical when it comes to entrepreneurship. After what's going on at home, then there comes the church, my business, my coaching practice, and the speaking that I do. And that's a juggle. It is. It absolutely is. But I've got teams in each one of those who help me. I've got a team at the church. Delegation is not optional at this point. You have to not do everything yourself. If everything is running through you, then you're the lid. Congratulations. You're going to cap the growth. That same thing is true in my business. The same thing is true with my speaking. I've got people in each one of those areas who help me to make sure that I can bring what I bring best and who help me compensate for the things that I'm not great at.
I want to get your thoughts too on like education. As entrepreneurs, like we're typically obsessive about learning and growing, but then we also have to take action on the things that are important too. Like, and then we also got to invest a lot of money to be able to be in those rooms or masterminds or connections and stuff. What do you budget, or how do you articulate the different seasons of education or books or seminars or different masterminds? How do you go about really kind of sorting through that yourself?
Personally, I prioritize that. I think that information alone never leads to transformation. Information plus execution leads to transformation. And so I love to read. You can see this. Go to conferences. I'm in coaching with different coaches for different seasons of my life. I'm in our mastermind. The reason I'm in those things is because of the value that they add, but none of them are cheap. Even the books are getting more expensive these days.
Yeah.
And so, you've got a budget for that. You've got to say, hey, how am I going to allocate my resources in such a way that I maximize that and maximize the benefit, but also bearing in mind, if you're not taking action, if there's no execution plan to go along with your input plan, um, you're not going to do yourself any favors. So many of us are like these bobbleheads. And we just keep taking in information, and our heads get bigger and bigger, and our bodies never move. That's not going to get you where you want to go.
Mhm.
You got to have an execution plan as well as an input plan. Conferences, books, masterminds, coaching, all of those are important. All those are critical for me, and all those are budget items, right? Because I value that. They're all going to help me move from where I am to where I want to be. And I would not be where I am without them.
Yep. I want to get your thoughts on AI too. Like, how much of that are you incorporating right now within your team, with writing books, writing content, speaking? How much of AI are you leveraging right now?
We are learning a lot. And I think that the danger of AI and the blessing of AI is two sides of a coin. A good friend of mine, Jonathan Mast, we talk about this, and he knows more about AI than just about anybody I know. We did a webinar together last year around leadership and AI and how this really how they can work together and complement one another. I think AI is an incredible tool. And I'll say our team uses it every day. How you use it matters. I'm never going to sit down and say, all right, write my book, go. Like, no, that's not going to happen, right? It can't do that. You're asking it to do something it can't do. But when I'm doing research for a book, it's incredibly valuable because its processing power is far superior to mine. It can find information and do research on specific things and help me find citations and resources that I can then bring it. Hey, I think I heard somebody talk about that. What was his name? His name was Nathan. What was that? Hey, can you help me find this? And boom, there it is. It's a phenomenal research tool. It's a phenomenal processing tool.
Mhm.
We're experimenting with some custom GPTs to see what we can do with them. Is there a way for this to be leveraged to help people in their leadership journey? Not sure yet. I think so. And so we're experimenting, we're testing to see if we can create some custom GPTs that are designed to take a lot of the things that I coach people on and help people when I'm not available. I've only got 168 hours a week, just like you and everybody else. So is there a way to extend what I'm doing through that technology? I think there is. We haven't cracked the nut yet, but I think we're getting closer.
Mm. Well, I can talk to you forever about some of this cool stuff about leadership, about techniques and speaking and writing books, because I think you're a wealth of information from that. But how can people follow you and connect with you further?
You can go to catalyticleadership.net. That's our central hub for everything that I do. Find out more about what I'm writing, where I'm speaking. Check out the podcast, Catalytic Leadership Podcast. I'm interviewing a whole lot of fascinating and interesting people, just like Nathan. Check out his episode. And, I would love for your listeners to connect with me if they're on Facebook. We have a Facebook group called the Leadership Lab. And the reason I called it that is because that's the place where we're just trying some stuff. We throw some stuff out there and have great discussions around ideas like AI. Love to have your listeners be a part of that.
Perfect. I'll put those links down below. Go check out Will and his Facebook group and some of the connections. He's all over the place. He has some really good resources and connections. If you found this episode, really helpful, make sure to like and subscribe. Go follow Will. But don't forget down in the description, we have that workshop that I created to help you as well. And thanks for tuning in and being on the episode here. And we will see you on the next episode.